All right, party people, welcome back to episode 4 of building the OpenSource-Odyssey website. In today's episode, I want to clean the house a little bit. In the first episode of this series, we set up a payload project with create-payload-app, and we initialized the website template, which gave us a lot of great stuff out of the box. But there's a little bit too much stuff going on right now in the code repository. So in this episode, I want to dig a little bit through the project code and maybe delete some files that we are not going to use today. So once again, here I am in our root of the project. And here I have my terminal that is in the same location. Let's just quickly bring up the development server, the front end and the admin front end for this project. All right, so here we go. Let's enter our username. And this is the front end as we have it right now. So first up, we have our little greeting text that may be useful to you if you start your own payload project, but I'm not going to use it in the coming videos. So let's quickly throw that out right away. And the way we do this is we go to the heart of our payload application, the payload config, and let's hop into this file right here. And then we have our build config function that takes an object and initializes our payload project with it. And here right at the start, we can see the components. So we have a before login component and a before dashboard component. And what you're seeing right here is a before dashboard component. So all of the stuff here on the admin root path, this is called the dashboard. And if I now go in here and let's comment this out really quick. Go back to the project, maybe reload the page. You will see, bam, it's gone. So great stuff. Let's delete this entire thing. So that's one step. But now I still have the component in my project. So let's find this and also remove that one. So here in the components folder, I have the before dashboard component. It is a great component if you want to learn how to do these custom components in the admin panel, but we are not going to use it. So let's just get rid of the entire thing. And let's also make sure that nowhere else in the code we reference the before dashboard. Here you can see in the import map, we still have it. And the reason this is because when you do these custom components, payload reads in our config and we have these file paths in the config. So for example, here in the before login, we also have a file path that is referencing our source folder, then the components folder, and then the before login folder. And this is the way we do imports. Yeah, so we don't do the import inside of our TypeScript like we do here at the top. Instead, we just reference the file path to the component. And then when we generate this import map, so the import map file is a file that is automatically generated. It reads in the payload config and all of the collection configs and everything that is nested inside, and it creates this import map. And we can regenerate this import map. Let's quickly exit out of our server. And we can regenerate this by just typing generate import map. And this is a script that is set up when we initialize the payload application. So here you can see the generate import map command. So when we run this, it creates a new import map. Now let's do that again and look for our before dashboard component. And as you can see, there's nothing here. So now the import map is regenerated without this particular component. Great. So the next thing I want to do is I immediately noticed when I looked at the payload config here is that the file paths are not to my liking. I really like to have these absolute file paths. So stuff like this with the @ symbol instead of the relative paths with a dot. And the reason why I like to have it is just because it makes refactoring a lot easier. Say we wanted to move some stuff out of this file, then we don't have to care about, well, where exactly is the new file located relative to this current payload config. We can just copy paste it. And let's take a look at our folder structure because it's going to be very simple. So remember, the source folder is aliased by the @ symbol. So all we had to do here is basically replace the / with an @ symbol. And I'm going to do that for all of these imports right here. Then our prettier configuration with the import sorting that we set up in video 2 is taking place. So we get a nice little reordering here, and this is great. While I'm on this, let's also make sure that the changes we do are well documented kind of and atomic. So I want to commit the change where I remove the beforeDashboard. So this is this part right here where we remove this component, but not the import sorting. This is another commit we will do. And then I want to commit also the deleted beforeDashboard component here and the import map. So let's give this a commit with a message that reads remove automatically generated beforeDashboard component. It's a little bit long, so let's stay within the bounds of the commit message. I think this is nice and descriptive. And then the second thing we can do here is refactor to absolute imports. Great. So this way we keep a nice descriptive history of the changes that we made to the code repository, and we can later on easily revert back if we wanted to, or just understand what happened at a particular point in time. Now, let's come back to the payload config. There is another thing that I definitely want to set. So let's move this to the top here. And let's also fold this at level 2 so we can easier see what's going on. So I think this is a great workflow. If you are not doing this, you should definitely look into code folding, because it can make it way easier to understand a file, a class, what is going on in there like this. Yeah, so I just see the first level, and I could also fold it at level 2. Yeah, so here inside I can see now 2 levels deep, but this is great right here. And what I can now do is I can disable the telemetry. So the telemetry, let's quickly move over to the payload documentation. So PayloadCMS.com/docs. And let's search for telemetry. So telemetry is completely anonymous, yada, yada, yada. It's okay. It's great that they, well, to my mind, it's not great that they automatically opt you into the telemetry. I think it's something that should be opted out, but you can opt in if you do want to share your usage stats. But for my purposes, I really love Payload, but I'm not going to send them my data. So I'm just going to enter telemetry false in here. Again, let's do a quick commit. And let's say opt out of telemetry for payload. Now, there is another thing that we're using. We're using NextJS, right? And NextJS is also using collecting telemetry data. So let's quickly go on the documentation for NextJS telemetry. It's like default opted in, but we can opt out if we want to. And the way we do opt out is by setting this environment variable. Let's now come into our .env where we have our environment variables. Let's paste it in here. And if you watched the last video, which you definitely should have watched, we also need to have this in our server env. So let's come to our server MJS, add this right here. Let's say it's a Z. Now, like I mentioned in the last video, when we set up this t3env, every variable that we read from the .env file by default will be a string. So what we need to do is we need to coerce this value into a number. Now the 1 here, yeah, you can think of this as like this. There is no other way this file can be read. So we are coercing it to a number, and let's also give it a default of 1. Great. Let's quickly bring up our development server again, just to check that everything is working. Looks good. So now we have opted out of the Next.js telemetry as well. Opt out of Next.js telemetry. Great. Let's hop back into the payload config and let's do some more configuration here. For my purposes, I don't think I will be using GraphQL. So I will also disable GraphQL. And I can do this again by coming into the payload config. If you want to read up on the documentation, go to payload docs, go for GraphQL. Let's look at the overview. So we have our GraphQL options right here, and we can disable GraphQL entirely. So this is what I want to do. I will say disable is true. There is more that we have to do here. So if I look for GraphQL in my project, you can see that we have some API routes. And the way this works is the path you can see right here, it's in the app folder. Then we have our logical folder, which is denoted by the round parentheses. So this is just like API would be directly in the app folder. But for logical separation, the way Payload is doing things is we have this front end, which is basically everything that we want to write in our application. And then we have the admin area, let's say, that is denoted by this payload. So in the API, I can come in here, mark these two folders, the GraphQL and the GraphQL payload, and just remove these folders entirely. So now if we view the changes, it's going to look like this. And let's also stage those and commit. And let's say disable GraphQL. Great, so now we have made 5 changes already. Let's go back into the payload config and let's look for more that we could do here. So we have a before login component that renders a message that you see while logging into your admin panel. Feel free to delete this at any time. Simply remove the line below and the import before login. Oh, that reminds me, do we still have an unused import now from the before dashboard? Oh no, we don't, because we didn't import it. It's just referenced by the string here. So let's take a look at this before login component and see what it does. So it says, welcome to your dashboard. This is where site admins log in to manage your website. I think this is fine. We're going to leave it for now. It's not the end of the world. It's not a big component. Now, here we have the live preview. The live preview is amazing if you want to go into the admin portal. I do have the dev server running. Great. So let's just compile this really quickly. So the live preview would be I click on a page, for example, and in the very first video, we already created this very basic homepage. The live preview is basically this right here. And we can see our website in real time. So if we change something, like we say, let's add another column and call this another column, you can see in real time it updates, and we can see how the website will look once we publish those changes. So the live preview is great. We're going to keep this. Then in the editor, we have our default lexical, which is a rich text editor. So this right here is a rich text editor. We can say column, the word should be in bold. And let's also say maybe we want to have a level 2 heading that says heading level 2. And the default lexical is basically the default configuration whenever we use lexical. So this is fine as well. Then we have our database adapter. Already spoke a little bit about this in the last video. We just pass it our database unique resource identifier. Then we have some of the collections. These were populated by the website template. I think I'm going to keep them for now. It's just, let's say, a very intrusive thing to remove those. And at a later point in time, we may have posts, we may have categories, we will definitely have media, and we also have some users. This is our admin users collection. So this is fine. Then we have course. I'm not going to mess with that. Course is a headache for all web developers. So it works the way it works. And yeah, we just leave it. Then we have our globals. So globals are special collections, let's say, in Payload, where the header and the footer is present on every page. Actually, let's quickly publish these changes so we can navigate away from this page. And let's take a look at how the header currently looks. So we don't have much. We do have a search icon and the payload logo. And here we could add nav items. So for example, I could link to a content page. I could link to the homepage. And now if I go back to my website, you can see I have the homepage link right here. And this links to home. And home is the same as this one. All right. Then in the plugins, let's see what plugins we have. This is an import that is coming from add plugins. So it's going to be this folder right here. And inside of here, let's see what plugins come with the default. We have a redirects plugin. So this is taking care of our redirects. We can set up redirects basically if you go to one page and maybe it's not quite ready, or we use it for some kind of campaign that we want to track users, then we could use a redirect. I'm going to leave it for now. We have a nested docs plugin. We have a SEO plugin, so search engine optimization. We have a form builder plugin. So a form is something like we want maybe to create a contact form where people can post messages. So here we can create forms. And then in our form submissions, we will have all of the submitted forms by the users. This is all great. Now we have a search plugin. So this is going to be this little magnifying glass at the top here. When we click it, we will be redirected to the search and we could search for some posts that we don't have right now. Speaking of all of the things we don't have right now. Oh, and we also have this Payload Cloud plugin. I don't know too much about that, so let's quickly go and find out about it. Payload Cloud plugin. Okay, nothing comes up here. Did I spell that right? Yeah, I did. Let's maybe search for it online. So this is not the right thing. This is the plugin Cloud. You know what? I'm just going to remove that. I don't need it. Let's make a commit here. Remove Payload Cloud plugin and come back to our payload config. Go to the top here. We were at plugins, so we looked through all of the plugins. The secret is just some secret we pass to secure our traffic, I guess. We have a sharp, which is for sizing images. We have our reference to the payload types. This file is also automatically generated. If you want to generate these payload types, you could say pnpm generate types. But usually if you have your development server running, it will automatically detect changes in the files, like in the collections, and it will automatically regenerate this payloads types. So we don't have to worry too much about this. Then here in the jobs, I haven't messed with this too much, but I guess here we set up our jobs queue. Let's leave this for a later point in time. And the last two we just added. So the payload config is looking pretty good. Now I was speaking about the things we don't have yet. In the very beginning of this video, I removed the beforeDashboard component. And this component exposes a seed functionality that if you wanted to kind of see what is possible with just configuring the out-of-the-box website template that the create-payload-app gives us, it will basically populate it with some articles or some posts, let's say. Yeah, so it will put stuff into all of these collections right here, so you can see how they interconnect and yeah. And the way that they do this is by having the seed endpoint right here. And in the seed endpoint, yeah, you can see we are seeding all of this stuff. And I think I'm going to get rid of basically everything. But I want to do this in a smart way because I know that if I just remove all of this, it's going to break some stuff. So let's quickly look through the index.ts, which is going to be the entry point for our seeding thing. So we import a bunch of stuff here. Then we have our seed function that takes in a mock request or the request itself and the payload instance. And then we do a promise all to create the globals, yada yada. Actually, I'm feeling a little bit frisky, so I think I'm going to remove the entire thing. So let's quickly, before I do this, look for the endpoints seed to see where this is referenced. And we can see in the front end app, we are importing this as well as in the front end next seed route. So this right here, the front end next seed route, is the route that will be called when we want to see, like when we click on this little button in the beforeDashboard component. But I don't think I will need this at all. So let's just remove the seed totally. And now let's look again for endpoints seed. Come into the slug page. So we have the home static here. I think I'm going to remove this as well. So where do we use home static? Right here. Remove this code once your website is seeded. Yeah, I'm not going to seed my website, so whatevs. Just going to remove it. And now let's come back to the endpoints seed. And I think I will remove the entire seed folder. Bam. Now let's check if our development server is still running correctly and I didn't break anything. So let's refresh the front end as well as the admin portal. It's going to take a while to compile. All right, I think we're looking good. It's okay. Nothing did break. Yeah, can we go back to the homepage? Yes, we can. Everything is dandy. I think we will make a commit. I'm going to leave the endpoints folder, even though it's empty right now. Maybe at a later point in time, I will reuse this, and then it's nice to have a location for it. So let's come into here. Now we deleted quite a lot, but everything has to do with the seeding. So I'm going to stage all of this, and let's add a commit message, remove seed endpoint, and seed script, let's say. Cool. So I think we've done quite a bit to clean this up. And I think I will leave it at this for today's video. And then in the next video, we will actually start adding stuff. So now we just threw out a bunch. In the next video, we will add a little bit, add maybe a branding, like change out the logo to our own OpenSource-Odyssey logo. If you haven't seen it, it's looking rad. Just check out the channel where you're watching this video and change out the fav icon. And yeah, so thank you for watching again. Make sure to sub this channel and leave a comment for the algorithm, or if you have a question, I'll be happy to answer them. And thank you for watching. Onwards, cypherpunks.